as Jim mentioned, I was an engineer in the corporate world, did a startup company and a bunch of other stuff. But while I was working, I also started going to seminary. And using my great intellect and personal power, I actually compressed a 3 years master degree into 11 years. But I did finally graduate. And after, about my last job, I worked for 7 years. I was challenged by my pastor after going to a really intensive men's weekend with my pastor and the men's pastor. It was down in Texas, and we're actually in the airport ready to fly home, and they started recruiting me and say, Michael, why don't you quit your job and come and do this with us in our church? This meaning, our church was really good at getting people in the doors that wouldn't normally go to church, but we had absolutely no plan for how we grow those people up as followers of Jesus. So we had a lot of really, really young Christians, like people that would come up after the sermon, and they would say, Pastor Jim, I really loved your sermon, but when you said that, the thing on the slide there, it said COL.3:12, is there some sort of coding book for what that means? Those are the kinds of people that were in our church, right? And so I was hired, and I said, well, what do you want me to do, when I'm talking to the leaders, and say, well, what do you want to do? And I say, well, all these people that got baptized last week, and my question is, okay, who's helping them grow into maturity in their walk and teaching them how to walk with Jesus? And they said, okay, go. We bless you. That's your job. And I called myself the pastor of spiritual formation, like the pastor of discipleship. But it sounds a little less Christian, maybe, which could be good in our church because we get a lot of people who aren't very Christian-y, but they love Jesus. And so I just started doing things. I didn't know really what to do, right? Jesus said, go into all the nations and baptize them and then teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And my question with that is, okay, but how? How do you do that? And so I just started doing stuff. I wrote a book called Basic Training for Walking with Jesus, really aimed at a lot of these brand new Christians that don't know a thing, keeping them up, getting them up on the ramp on some basic knowledge of how you walk with Jesus and what it is we believe about him and who is our God. And I also did a 5-week training in spiritual disciplines based on a guy named Dallas Willard. And so for 5 weeks, we would meet after church, and we would go through in 5 weeks like 12 different spiritual disciplines and practice those together. And I did a bunch of other stuff, and I had lots of really good results. I had one person after our 5-week training came up and said, Michael, I think this training saved my marriage. I didn't really design it to save anybody's marriage, but I'm glad that happened. Another woman came up to me and said, Michael, I had no idea churches even did this kind of thing. So really, some really, really encouraging results sometimes. And other times, the things I was doing didn't seem to help at all. Some people, these practices profoundly impacted and changed them, and other persons, it's just like whoosh, above my head. And so as a pastor of discipleship, I kept running into the word sometimes. Why do these things seem to work sometimes and in some situations and don't seem to work other times for other people? Or the usual Christian prescriptions work really good for certain kinds of life issues and problems and growth stuff, but there's other areas where it just seems like it's just part of the puzzle and we're missing bigger pieces of the puzzle that need to go with the traditional things we think of. And so I got to the point where I was sitting in my office in our church, a church like this, sitting in my chair, staring at a dry erase board, a blank dry erase board, and asking God for a picture. Because I came to the conclusion that, basically I had to say, God, I don't know how to do my job as a pastor of spiritual formation. Because I don't understand really how people change. And God took that as a prayer. Dear God, I don't know how to do my job as a pastor of discipleship. Amen. And a couple weeks later, I got a call in my office from a man who had visited our church. He's an elder of another church down in Denver, not too far away. And he said, we sent a team to your church to kind of study what you're doing and learn from you. And I saw the book you wrote, the basic training. And I also then went online and saw your spiritual disciplines. He said, I am a friend of Dallas Willard's, who's kind of this discipleship guru guy. He really emphasized the importance of discipleship. And he said, and he wrote a bunch of books, Dallas Willard did, and my friend said, and Dallas would complain to me, and he said, it seemed like a lot of churches read my books, but almost no churches actually do discipleship. And they looked at me we had lunch later, and he looked at me across the table and said, but it seems like you're actually doing it. And normally that would be a compliment, right? I should feel good. But what he didn't know is I was swimming in this pool of sometimes, like, why does this not work all the way? Was this sometimes and not sometimes it doesn't seem to work at all? And I had all this stuff running in my mind. So I kind of vomited that on the table, my frustrations as a discipleship pastor. And he said, well, why don't we start having lunch once a month together and start to look into discipleship and how we can do it better and how we can help churches do it more and how can we do it more effectively? I pulled another pastor friend in, so it was a group of 3 of us, and we just started reading books and looking at videos and sermons and all sorts of stuff. About 6 months into those lunches, this man, Bob, said an interesting thing. He said, Michael, I think we're ignoring an aspect of discipleship, and that's how God designed the human brain. And I looked at him, I said, Bob, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he got this little smile on his face, and he said, well, why don't I invite my friend Jim Wilder to our lunch next month? Because I think he can explain a little bit better than I can. So a month later, we showed up to our discipleship lunch, all of us, there are 4 of us. This man, Jim Wilder, sitting down with us. He looked across the table at me for some reason. I don't know why he looked at me particularly, because all the rest of the people were pastors. And he said, Michael, what would you like out of this time together? And I shared with him what I just shared with you, my frustrations as a discipleship pastor. And then he said something I've never forgotten. He put his hand on his chin and he said, Michael, I think it might help you to understand a little bit about the human brain and the way God designed the human brain to mature us and to form our character into the image of Jesus. Now, by that time, I had been a Christian for 35 years. I'd been a missionary in Argentina. I'd gone to seminary. I'd been an elder at our church for 10 years, a pastor for 4 years. And in that time, no one had ever said anything like that in my entire Christian life. And I was all ears. And then Jim did an interesting thing. He kind of bent over. He had like a bag here, and he pulled out of his bag a plastic brain. And he unhooked the left and the right hemispheres and started explaining to me how God designed the human brain to interpret our relational surroundings and form us as humans. And I got my clicker. Sometimes I'll actually build a brain with people. I can't do that here, but maybe sometime in the future. It's really interesting when you have actual people playing the different stages of the brain and run stuff through it. But basically what he said is we really have 2 brains that work closely together, but they focus on different things. And our right brain is our social, emotional, community, relational brain. And it's very, very fast. A lot of the right brain is actually faster than our conscious thought. So our right brain comes to conclusions before we even know why we know something. Have you ever walked into a room or a party or something and all of a sudden you know something but you don't know why you know it? Or you're feeling something but you're not quite sure where it's coming from? That means your right brain's come to a conclusion and your left brain, which is much slower, which is your conscious brain, takes a while before you even understand, and sometimes you don't understand. And our right brain focuses on things like, who are my people? And what is it like us as a people to act here? Your worship leader just said a very profound thing. I don't think he realized how profound that was. He says, worship is not just me and God talking about us, but it's about we as a people, as a church. Who are we, and what is it like us to act? Our brain 12 times a second is asking the question, who are we in this situation I'm in, and what is it like us to act in a way that reflects who we are? 12 times a second it's asking that. It also is asking, who is with me right now? Do I feel all alone in this situation, or are there people that get me? Are the people here that get me, just from the look on their faces and their nonverbal stuff? Or is there people and memories like I know my wife's with me right now, even though I don't really know anybody here? Or do I feel all alone? Have you ever gone into a situation and you all of a sudden feel like you're all alone and nobody gets you? Nobody really knows or seems to care what's going on inside of me right now. That's a particular area of the brain that's asking that question, and it's a particular kind of pain. It's called attunement pain. And so the right brain, it actually processes everything. All our way to interpret our surroundings and sense our surroundings. Like the hum of the fan. You hear the fan? The smell of coffee. The look on people's faces around you. And anything else that we can use, our senses, they all end up going into the back part of our right brain, our relational, emotional brain. And they travel from the back. Here, put your finger in the back right part of your brain. They travel from the back to the front, right kind of behind your eye. And then they cross over and they go from the front to the back on your left brain. So your right brain is always processing at first. It's also the faster processor. It looks at things 12 times a second, whereas our left brain's just 5 times a second. So our left brain's way behind. And our left brain is kind of what we think of in popular culture as the brain. It's problem solving. It's verbal. It tries to put words to things. Strategies, coming up with good strategies. Believing the right things. Willpower, doing the right things, making better choices. All of that is left brain, willpower, conscious thought. Right brain's way ahead of that stuff. It's things we know instantly. And so Jim's explaining to this and everything. I'm understanding maybe half of it, like some of you are probably only understanding half of what I'm saying right now, and that's okay. It takes a few times. And he finished, and I said, well, Jim, what's this have to do with discipleship, though? And then he said, well, character formation, which is a central task of Christian discipleship, is primarily a right brain dominant task. And in the church, we've largely put most of our discipleship focused on training the left brain. And that's why you're having these questions and don't see more transformation of character. Because at that point it had more questions than answers. Like, for example, why do I sometimes see my non-Christian friends treating people better than some of my Christian friends? Not always, but sometimes. Why? Why did I sometimes see pastors and Christian leaders acting in ways that don't look like Jesus at all? I mean, if you read the news, what is it? Probably every other week there's another story of a Christian pastor, a leader of a Christian university, a Christian missionary, this or that. And you read the article, and I'm like, I'm embarrassed to be called a Christian. This is embarrassing. And why does that seem to be happening over and over and over again? And why can't we seem to get along better? Getting back to the main focus of this conference of unity, why is that so hard for us? So I might add that relational skills, and primarily right brain relational skills, are necessary to maintain unity in today's world. And they're largely right brain skills, and they can be trained. That's the interesting thing. We can learn them. And so you might be wondering, well, where does this all go? And I was thinking the same thing after Jim explained this, and I said, well, Jim, give me an explanation. After he explained the control processor of the human brain. They also call it the pain processing pathway. There's some different words for it. So I said, Jim, what's an example then if we've put most of our discipleship focused on our left brain, what's an example of a spiritual practice or something that our right brain needs to be developed? And then Jim said something interesting. He said, our right brain desires one thing more than anything else. It's the first thing our brain scans for when we're born, and it continues to the day we die. It's the first thing your brain scanned when you came through that door into this room, and it's what it's looking for right now. And that thing is joy. Really called relational joy. Now, I could give you a definition of joy. That would be left brain, words explaining what joy is. And I'm going to give you a definition, but not first. I'm going to first give you a right brain definition of joy. You ready for a right brain definition of joy? This is joy. Just soak up these faces for a moment. Just sit and enjoy them. And as you enjoy the relational joy in these pictures, notice what you feel in your body. Our brains were wired to be looking for faces that are looking for us. And so the left brain definition of joy is what we feel in our bodies. When I can tell largely from your face and your eyes that you are happy to be with me. And I can tell I'm special to you. It's not primarily nonverbal. It doesn't require words. Words can help it, but it doesn't need words. You know in about a 1/12 of a second whether a person's happy to be with you or not. You know before you even realize you know it. And joy are like faces of grace towards us, faces that are shining on us. And it reminds me when my kids were children, we had 3 kids in 3 years, basically. And so in the early years, like when we had a 6-month and a 1.5 and a 3-year-old or whatever, and we'd put them to bed kind of early so my wife and I could have some time together. Then before I go to bed, I'd tiptoe in their room and I'd look in their crib, and I could feel my face is just shining delight on my kids. They were asleep so they couldn't absorb it, but my face was broadcasting joy. I just could not believe how beautiful and precious they were to me. So you might ask, what does joy have to do with discipleship? Which is what I asked Jim Wilder. And he says, from the design of the brain, the growth of our maturity and our character are essentially stuck when our joy is low. And really nothing in life works well when joy is low. Joy meaning not happiness, but joy meaning that I have very few people with faces that are happy to be with me. Interesting. Joy actually functions a little bit like a gas tank too, as we build joy with each other by letting our faces shine on each other. As we build joy with God, notice that one of the only times God ever gives the Israelites a blessing to pray over the people, in Numbers 3, it's, May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shining on someone is the neurological definition of joy that Dr. Alan Shore discovered from brain scans at UCLA that God knew all along. And it's in the Bible. What we're learning from the brain so well lines up with the Bible. If you read The Other Half of Church, that's my book. I even have a whole chapter on joy and a particular chapter on how the Bible is just over and over again talking about joy. And so we need to make a warning, though. You look at these faces, their smiles, they're lighting up and everything. And it's very easy to associate joy with happiness, okay? And joy is not happiness. It's very, very important. For example, take a look at this picture. What if I were to tell you that this picture is just as joyful as the previous slide? Why is that? Who said that? You get a free book. Joy is essentially relational, and we can be joyful in all emotions. We can be joyful in anger. I can be angry with you and be very happy to be with you. If you've ever had teenagers, you've learned how to develop this. We want to strangle them and we love them like crazy at the same time, right? Shame. Disgust. When someone does something that's disgusting, we can train our brains to also simultaneously be joyful to be with them. Doesn't mean we approve of their behavior. It means our relationship is bigger than this issue we're having. Anger, fear. When's the last time you used anger to improve a relationship? That reveals whether you know what joyful anger looks like or not. And so it's easy to associate joy with happiness, and joy is happy and delightful and smiles, but joy is also somber It can be angry. We can need to cry together, but we're happy to be together. You know, when your toddler in their high chair takes their green beans and throws them on the floor, they can tell instantly within a 12th of a second that you're not happy to be with them and that you're happy to be with them. And our brain can actually do that weird thing. Not being happy to be with someone is the emotion of shame. The definition of shame is I can tell from your face and your eyes that you're not happy to be with me. And so Jesus lived a very high shame life because there were lots and lots of people who were not happy to be with him, and yet he was very relational in that shame. He's our master. He is a genius. He's a relational genius as well as an intellectual genius. You'll read the Gospels over again looking for joy, and you'll see things you've never seen before. And joy can be experienced in all of the big negative feeling emotions, and that's what I train churches. I train lead teams of churches and ministries. One of the things we do is we go into the 6 big emotions, negative emotions that are hardwired into our right brain, which is anger, fear, sadness, disgust, shame, hopeless despair. And we assess these, and we find the ones that we're least relational in, and we work on those and focus on it. When you do this in a group, it's wonderful because we all have holes in our emotional resilience, but mostly we have different holes. Like you're better at shame, but I'm good at anger, but you're good at fear, and so we can pass it on to each other through exercises that we've designed. And over time, you will have what we call a very emotionally resilient brain, meaning you can handle big emotions, and you stay yourself, and you stay relational. And that's trainable. In order to train, we look at the emotions where we most likely go non-relational, and that's where we focus our work. That's the other half of church. That's some of the things that have been missing out of discipleship for many, many years. And so, particularly pertinent to this conference is that staying relational in big negative emotions is key to a high-capacity unity. Well, what is a high-capacity unity? It's a unity that can withstand lots of big negative stuff and stay relational. High-capacity unity is not easily broken down because we keep relationships as bigger than problems, even when we're having problems. That's what we're going to talk about. And so you might wonder, how do we train this, okay? So when I train in a church, I usually meet with them on Zoom for 90 minutes twice a month for almost a year and take them through skill by skill by skill. So today, in 45 minutes, all I can do is give you a taste. So you ready for a taste? Okay, let's buckle up. We're going to talk about a part of our control processor in our brain. There's a part of our brain that actually functions kind of like a circuit breaker. If your kitchen is like my kitchen, you know, if I'm using the microwave and my wife is using the toaster oven and then my daughter makes a smoothie and turns on the blender, guess what happens? They all go down. And then we have to find the button or the breaker and pop it back on. Well, our brains function similarly. When intensity gets too high, when emotions are too big for too long, when trauma gets touched, when we're especially tired, there's all sorts of different reasons, a part of our brain will actually it'll get wobbly and start to go down or go all the way down. And we lose a part of our brain. But we don't lose all of our brain. We just lose the part of our brain that's specifically designed to help us love each other well. That part goes bye-bye. So what do you expect that looks like? There's probably even some stories of your own life coming to mind, right? And so the skill we train on relational circuits is that the first skill is that it's very important to learn how to recognize when your relational brain has gone down. When you've popped a breaker, what's it feel like in my body? That's the thing we ask people, because your body gives you a clue your relational circuits are going off way before your conscious mind does. And what does my body feel like when my relational circuits are up and running well? And start to notice the difference there and share stories. We cannot directly tell when our relational circuits are off. There's no way to look at it. But we can tell indirectly. How do you think we could tell indirectly? Everything having both of those are true. Body language, eye contact, and even more generally, just our body will tell us. Because certain hormones are released when we lose our relational circuits, and those hormones you'll feel in your body. I can feel them now all of a sudden whenever something happens, I can feel, my relational circuits just got wobbly, and I'm not even sure why. That's a pretty common thing in our lingo. This new lingo is, well, my relational circuits really got hit hard, and I'm not sure what's going on here. And you bring it to your people and help figure it out and sit with Jesus and let him untangle the knot for you. We may also have some behaviors or little tells that we do when our relational circuits are off, so we learn these. So that when it happens, instead of it continuing to gauge in the argument or whatever big thing was happening, I realize, if I'm having an argument with my wife, I go, I think I just am losing my relational circuits, Claudia. Can we take a break? And so we've given each other permission to say that phrase. We don't give each other permission to say to the other one, your relational circuits are off. Because that'll actually make it worse. But we always give each other permission to say, hey, let's take a break. Things are getting intense, and we probably need a rest in our relational circuits so that we stay relational as we have this difficult conversation. Very wise relational move. So we learn to recognize these. We've also come up with some checklists for you that I'm going to send a PDF of these to your pastor here so he can send them on to you after the conference. So you don't have to frantically write these down, but we're going to go through them just so you kind of get a feel, okay? So this is a relational circuits checklist, and we call it simple enemy mode when your relational circuits go off. Enemy mode. That sounds ominous, doesn't it? We call it enemy mode because when your relational brain goes off, people start to feel like enemies that we either want to defeat or run away from. Or people feel like annoyances that we just want to avoid. Or people feel like problems that we want to fix. In all three of those situations, we're not being relational and we're not loving like Jesus loved. A more accurate description is we've forgotten who we are. Okay? So let's go through the checklist here. We'll talk a little bit about it. Okay, so when I'm in simple enemy mode, here's how things I can look at, a checklist, okay? First of all, I just want to make a problem and a person and a feeling go away. So when our relational circuits are, we just want this thing to go away as fast as possible. We're like reactive and we just want it to go away. Number two, I don't want to listen what others feel or say. So level 3 of the control process of the brain is the thing that helps us attune to other people's emotions. That thing's gone down, so I don't care about your emotions. Right? I just want this thing to stop. You have some memories in your own life when that's happened. This has happened to everyone in the room. I guarantee it. The third one is my mind is locked onto something upsetting. I'm sure none of you know what that's like. Something happens at work, and then on your drive home, you're thinking, why did that person do that? And then after dinner, you're thinking, what were they meaning to do? And as you go to bed, you're thinking, I'm angry with that person. And as you wake up in the morning, how do I get back at that person? Right? Or the next one says, I don't want to be connected to blank, which is someone I usually like. So you use your closest relationships to help you figure out when your RCs, your relational circuits go off, because you'll notice all of a sudden, I don't want to be with my wife anymore. When normally I would think it's something she's done, but now when I don't want to be with my wife, I realize, Michael, your relational circuits have gone off. And so you need to take a breather and get your relational circuits back on before doing anything else. Okay? That's a game changer. The next one is I just want to get away, or I want to fight, or I want to freeze. So these are the emotional reactions when we've lost our emotional regulation. It's just to kind of either fight, be aggressive, or run away, or when we're stuck and can't do that, we're just kind of deer in the headlights. We've all had all three of those at different times in life. Or the last checklist on the bottom, it says, I more aggressively interrogate, judge, and fix others. We Christians think that we're supposed to be really good at fixing other people's problems. but it's a sign that your brain has blown a breaker. It's a sign that we're not being relational and we're not loving well. The only exception to that is when someone actually asks for help. So this is unasked for fixing, okay? So if you answer yes to any of these, one or more, your relational circuits are off and you are in simple enemy mode, okay? This can happen even more easily when we're tired. It's kind of like a relational cramp in the brain. Like when a leg cramps up, part of your brain's cramped up. They've taken brain scans. They take brain scans in the two areas, levels 3 and 4 of your right brain, there's no blood in them. And then they can do some exercises to bring your relational circuits back on, which are exercises of gratitude and other things. All of a sudden they'll see, whoosh, that fills back with blood and looks normal again. Interesting stuff. Because we're actually starving the circuits that help us love each other well from blood. And so we need to get them back on again. So simple enemy mode, it can be kind of like stupid enemy mode sometimes. This is when we break things or we drop words that we don't normally say. When we do things we normally don't do. This is often what happens when later you go, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? Or why did I say that? Well, what happened is not only does my attunement brain go down, but my identity group brain goes down, the part of my identity, and so I don't know who I am anymore. And so I very easily start acting like another person. Which is actually kind of gracious. Like when we do the stupider things we do, it's easy to think I'm just a bad Christian or I'm a bad person, but really the more accurate neuroscience reason, which also very much aligns with the Bible, is that I've forgotten who I am. And I stopped acting like myself. That's much more hopeful and gracious, isn't it? And it's a better description of it, actually. Because that's what we do. When our relational circuits go off, we stop acting like ourselves. Simple enemy mode, one of the exercises we do is we say, print this checklist out. There's more than one checklist. Print them out and put them in your pocket or in your purse or tape them on your bathroom mirror, and every single day start looking and asking yourself, when did my relational circuits go off or get wobbly today? And start talking about them with your people. And you do that for a couple of weeks, and you're like, your eyes are open, and you start seeing things you've never seen before about yourself and about others, those around you. Okay? Many people spend a good part of their lives in simple enemy mode. And your body is pumping cortisol when you're in that stage, and it's really, really bad for your body. So as you start to recognize this and start practicing to get your relational circuits back on, you become a healthier person. So it's all connected together. Any questions on simple enemy mode? Is it making sense? Okay. We're doing a panel later, so if you have questions too, you can write them down and ask later. Kind of. She goes, enemy mode is the same as relational circuits being off. I would say simple enemy mode is the same as relational circuits being off. The fact that we say simple enemy mode shows that there's another enemy mode, which we're going to now, which is called intelligent enemy mode. Intelligent enemy mode, your relational circuits are on, but your attachment circuit doesn't work right, so you don't think of people as being relevant or important to you. So simple enemy mode is you're just getting rid of the pain. Intelligent enemy mode is actually a little more diabolical. And so we had to create a second checklist for intelligent enemy mode, okay? And so let's go through that checklist. When my brain is in intelligent enemy mode, this feels very different than simple enemy mode, okay? I'm looking and listening and thinking of any weakness I can find in the other. So that's the opposite of simple, where I don't care what's going on in you, I just want this to stop. In this one, there's almost like a cold plotting, like I'm looking what's going on to you. I'm using the circuits God created for me to feel compassion on you, except I'm using them instead for a diabolical purpose. It's almost like a satanic hijacking of our brain, but we all go into intelligent enemy mode. Before we start pointing fingers, we all do it as well. As a matter of fact, part of the homework is when you go into enemy mode, you need to figure out, are you in simple or intelligent enemy mode? You need to get out of both, right? Number 2, I would like them to lose. So I'm scanning you, trying to understand you, and I want you to lose. You seeing where this is going? Number 3, I'm plotting my escape or covering my moves. So I'm pretending things, and I'm pretending I'm doing this when I'm really doing that. It's like a chess match, right? And the next one's important. I find my attitude easy to justify that I am right. So this one's actually trickier than simple enemy mode because I'm convinced I'm right. And if you tell me, like, come to me, Michael, the way you treated that person, that's not like you. Well, I'm convinced I'm right, so I'm going to say, well, you're wrong. So this one's more sneaky. You could call it sneaky enemy mode or predatory enemy mode or intelligent enemy mode. Next is tracking the other person's feelings and movements and plans feels strategic. Okay? And I know what will bother them and how I can use that to my advantage. So I'm scanning you for your weaknesses. I'm storing them up in my hip pocket, and then I know when to play that card when it can most harm you so that you lose and I win. It's very much about winning and losing. As a matter of fact, when attachment love is removed from Christianity, it really quickly becomes just about winning and losing. And that's not really Christianity. So if you answer yes to any of these questions, your attachment circuits are off. So a different part of your brain is off, and you're in intelligent enemy mode. It's common to go into intelligent enemy mode from time to time as well. All of us go into it. However, narcissists spend much of their life in intelligent enemy mode. This right here is the standard operating procedure of a narcissist. And we all go into that from time to time. Hopefully we don't camp there, but we all go into that from time to time. Interesting thing about this, though, is when I'm in intelligent enemy mode, my brain will assume that you're in enemy mode too, and you're plotting against me. And whether you really are or not. So when I'm in intelligent enemy mode, I look with suspicion upon other people. And I'm thinking, what is he thinking here? Why did she say that? What is she plotting against me? Why are they doing that? It's this enemy mode posture, okay? Looks nothing like the kingdom of Jesus, by the way. Absolutely nothing like Jesus' kingdom. That's why this is so important. So others seem like enemies, whether they really are or not. And it's difficult for us to tell when we are in enemy mode, in this intelligent enemy mode, because I'm self-justified. I'm convinced I'm right, even as I'm not acting at all like a Christian. I'm not saying I lost my Christianity, I've just forgotten who I was in the moment. We also have a hard time telling when other people are in intelligent enemy mode, because these are the con artists, or these are the salespeople who are pretending to be your friend, but they just want your money. They just want to sell you the car or whatever. Or even more diabolical, these are the abusers. The abusers who are convincing you that they love you, but they do not love you. They just want to get something out of you. Very diabolical. And so, you might think of, well, is this new brain science stuff? Is this even in the Bible? And I read through the whole New Testament looking for examples of this. A great one I found was Jude 16, the short book of Jude. And the author's writing to this church, and here's what he says. Listen to this. He says, about certain people in their church, he says, they enjoy using seductive flattery to manipulate others. That was probably written in 70 AD. That's intelligent enemy mode. It's as old as the human race, okay? So this is kind of yucky stuff, this intelligent enemy mode. It's like, ugh, I don't like this. I don't like even talking about it. So I'm not going to leave you there. We're going to go to the refreshing alternative, and this is relational circuits on. This means we are operating the way Jesus designed us in order to allow us to love people with the love of the kingdom of heaven. The central command of Christian discipleship is to love God with all of our heart, soul, and strength and mind, and our neighbors as ourselves. Love. And relational circuits are what help us love each other with the love of Jesus. So let's go through that checklist. It's going to be like a breath of fresh air. So when my relational circuit brain is on, I feel curious and I want to know what the other person is experiencing right now. Guess what that is? It's a leaning in of healthy curiosity. I'm scanning you for something going wrong, but not in order to take advantage of you, but in order to love you well and help you and support you and bring life. Feels different, doesn't it? I desire to share what the other person is feeling at this moment. So I'm not just impassive and scanning for what's going, but I can actually feel some of the, oh, yeah, that's got to hurt. We're feeling each other's pain. And I feel protective of them. Right? There's very much of a protective instead of a predatory nature when we're using this the way God designed. The other person feels like one of my people. Even when they may be, coming at me with some anger or we're disagreeing, my brain still says they are one of our people and we're working through this, but they're one of my people. Right? And the second to the bottom one is a great, actually, group identity. Remember, there's a part of our brain asking the question, who are we? Here's a good answer to that question. Relationships feel more important than the problem. I would say it this way. We are a people, as followers of Jesus, we are a people who keep relationships as more important than the problem. As we work on the problem, we have problems. We need to work on problems. We're not denying problems. But as we work on whatever problem we're having, we keep the relationship as more important. Does that make sense? That's just not what we do only. It's also who we are. That's the way God's kingdom works. That is like a taste of what heaven is like. And then the bottom one is I feel aware of God's presence. The area of our brain that was designed to help us sense the presence of another person who's not with us physically is part of the relational circuits. So when you lose that, you also lose your sense of Jesus' presence. He's still with you, but man, sometimes I can't. It feels like Jesus left the room at times, right? He didn't leave the rooms, but our circuits have gone off. So get them back on. And so part of your homework I would give you, so I always give homework because this really changes with practices, is when you get the PDF I'm going to send you to your pastor, start to become aware of your relational circuits daily and then eventually moment by moment. And when you sense they've gone off, take a snapshot of your body and share it with someone or share it with your small group. Share stories of when your relational circuits went off. Ask yourself, is this simple enemy mode or intelligent enemy mode? And then practice getting your relational circuits back on, which is what we're going to do real quick at the end right now, okay? The key, though, here's the key point. Noticing when we go into enemy modes and learning to get them back on quickly is an indispensable skill if we're going to be developing high-capacity unity. It's basically not going to work without that skill, okay? And so you might want to ask, well, where's this in the Bible? And one of my favorite verses having to do with this is Colossians 3:12. It's one of my favorite verses in the Bible. And Paul says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Look at all 5 of those words I've underlined. Every single one of those is relational. And every single one of those depends on a well-working right brain. Paul was essentially saying to the church, keep your relational circuits on, Colossians, please. When you lose your relational circuits, it's almost like you've thrown your clothing of heaven off. So you need to put your clothing back on. Okay, it's like clothing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to practice real quick getting our relational circuits back on. Let's go next one. So the goal for this is to perceive the Lord's presence when your relational circuits are off. Imagine your relational circuits are off. You want to perceive the Lord's presence and tell Jesus about my pain and receive his comfort so that I can get my relational circuits back on. And the strategy, which is the steps, is we quiet our bodies and talk to God about our emotions, which is quieting our soul, and then invite the Lord to help me perceive his presence. Okay? So I'm going to guide you through a quick practice, and I'm going to give you like a minute for each. And so, number one, shalom my body. There's a whole set of skills I teach in my trainings on shaloming my body, but the essential skill is taking a really, really deep breath, okay? So let's take a deep breath all together, like a good 5 or 6 second inhale through your nose. Hold it for a few moments, and then exhale through your mouth, okay? Let's do it together. Let's do it one more time. And enjoy your body slowing down for a moment. So that gives us a little bit of peace in our body. Okay, we always start with the bodies. Christians and Lord their bodies. So we start with the body, and it slows our heart down. It stops the releasing of cortisol, and we feel peace. And now since we've shalomed our body, now we shalom our soul, which means I talk to God directly about my emotions and my thoughts in the situation. So think of something that's been mildly upsetting you lately. You can do it as a test run. And talk to God about your thoughts and emotions, even though you may not perceive his presence yet. Don't talk to God about the other person or the big problem, because that will keep your relationships off, but talk to him about your thoughts and your emotions. And so let's just spend a minute in prayer about just share with God your thoughts and emotions in this situation that came to mind. And now let's progress from shaloming my body and then shaloming my soul to lamenting with God. And lamenting is nothing more than being sad together with God. So in this situation that came to mind where you're feeling some emotions and stuff, we've just shared all of our emotions and thoughts, but now focus it on the one emotion of sadness. And lament is what we're sad about together, God and me together. Okay? And so now interact with God about some things in your situation that make you and God feel sad together. And now let's grow some appreciation. So interact with God. You know, when I do this, I tell God what I appreciate about his presence and his faithfulness in times past when he has shown himself faithful to me. So go back and enjoy a time where God was faithful to you and just appreciate his faithfulness and let him know how much you're grateful for that. So we did this way faster than we normally do. Usually when I'm training, we spend a good 3 or 4 minutes on each one and take our time, but we have a clock. And if you want more information, you can take a picture of this and get on our email list. And we have all sorts of online free seminars and webinars, and we have an in-person conference and a bunch of stuff. I do a lot of consulting with churches. I'm actually working with a group of 50 Chinese women. It's called the Moms Discipleship Network in Beijing. And they've read one of our books that we got translated, and so I go online and train 50 Chinese women every 6 months, and the next month it's 50 more. And one of the women that was trained in these relational skills, she's gone back to her church and is training 17 people, and she just emailed me and said, can you set up another meeting with our 17 people, because they need to learn this other skill, and I'm not sure how to train it on them. And it's just really fun to do. And so if you're interested in learning more, come up, you can send me an email or sign up for one of our seminars. And this really is it's a journey into some what we call virgin snow. It's snow that's not been trampled yet in the mountains of Colorado, but it is an exciting place to be. And my wife and I have seen more changes in our life in the last 5 years than we have in the previous 20. And when there's good things that we experience, we want to pass them on to you. So may you be greatly blessed by God's face shining on you. Thank you.